You're listening to the Telltale Channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. Hey, this is Owen. If you're comfortable, leave your first name and state at the sound of the tiny truck backing up.
Hey Owen, this is Nico calling again from Hawaii. I just had a question for you. I wanted to get your take on it. What do you think is the best way to convince someone who doesn't value logic that logic is important? Like when a Jehovah's Witness comes to your door and they're trying to give you their message and you point out the logical flaws in what they're saying and they just don't get it. What's the best way to convince them that having a logical understanding is worth something?
If you're coming to the point where they're denying logic and refusing to accept it, I would say a better approach may be to lead them through the logic yourself without bringing it up directly in a very non-confrontational way. There's a method of interacting with people called street epistemology, and I've talked about it on my channel many times before. But I consider it one of the best ways to basically deprogram somebody, to try to bring them over, to try to walk them through step by step so that they come to the conclusions on their own. They can sit there and say, I don't accept the logic or whatever else, all they want. But if you're walking them through step by step, they're using the logic whether they like it or not, whether they're even aware of that or not. So what I try to do is just take it step by step with them. Ask them what they believe so that you're both on the same page. Like, do you believe that God's name is Jehovah? Yes, they do. Okay, that's a good starting point. So now we have established what they believe. Now we have to ask the question, why do they believe it? What, why, and how? We've established what they believe. Now we want to find out why they believe that thing. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses will give all kinds of reasons for why they believe that Jehovah is God's name. They'll talk about the English translation of Yahweh being Jehovah and things like that. Ultimately, you can cite facts to them. You can say the letter J didn't even exist until like the 14, 15, 1600s. Right there, it debunks it. But if you jump to those conclusions and present that data to them, that objectively true data, they're going to reject it. So you want to lead them to that conclusion without outright saying it. You want them to come to the conclusion. You don't want to present it to them. So we've established what they believe. We've established why they believe it. And now the third question, how, is how can we know for sure? How can we test it? How can we verify that you are correct? Ultimately, when you go through that process with somebody, asking the questions and leading them to the conclusions, what you find is everything that they believe without evidence boils down to faith. That's the definition of faith, ultimately. Belief without evidence. And at that point, you can ask them, how can we know that we are more correct in our Christian belief, using, us and we words so that they feel included in this, so that they feel like you and they are in it together, trying to work to find the answers. How can we know that we're correct when a Muslim says the exact same thing? How can we know that we're right when a Muslim bases their beliefs off of faith exactly the same as us? How can we tell if we're correct or the Muslim is correct? And ultimately, at the end of the conversation, 99.9% of the time, there is no answer to it. So they're just going to throw their hands up and say, I don't know. At that point, end the conversation and move on to another subject and kind of let them stew on it. In a day, 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, even a month, come back to it. Do it again. Ask them questions about it again. If you lead them down the logical path and you make them feel like you're working together to come to these conclusions and figure this out together, and you don't do something that will throw their guard up. You keep their guard down and stay non-confrontational, then you'll have the highest rate of success with it, I think.